Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I thought I'd do something a little bit different today, and rather than looking at specific books, I'm going to look at reviews instead, and a couple of different sites that you can leave reviews on. So I wanted to talk about the importance of leaving a review, and this comes in a couple of different ways. There's the importance to the reader and the importance to the writer, and these are quite different. Reviews, and in particular ratings, can be quite contentious, and there's a lot of talk about 5-star ratings and what do they mean, and I've seen plenty of videos, and I'm sure you have too, about different booktubers and different reviewers who have decided that they are not going to use 5-star ratings anymore. This is definitely a kind of each to their own scenario, and for the record, I'm a fan of the 5-star rating. I'm going to continue using them alongside my weighted ratings, which act as a kind of percentage rating for the books that I read. But that's not what this video is about today. However you choose to do it, ratings and reviews I think are very important for the growth and the reach of a particular book. They help readers decide whether a book is worth the commitment, because it is of course a commitment for someone to pick up a book and actually read it. But it also of course helps the authors with regards to visibility and the algorithm on various review and retail sites their book appears on. Reviews can be important to the individual as well in terms of the detail that they provide. So outside of a rating, which can't really tell you much beyond an overall kind of perceived quality of a book, a review can obviously give more detail than that. And I've seen plenty of occasions where a low scoring review, a 1 or a 2-star review, has helped a reader to decide to pick up the book because of some of the terms mentioned, some of the things that the individual reviewer didn't like, other readers will. And similarly, a 5-star rating can turn a reader off if it mentions things that they know that they don't like, so they might not pick that book up and potentially will avoid a disappointing read. So a review doesn't have to be an in-depth analytical essay. It can literally be just a sentence or two detailing what the individual liked or didn't like about a book, and it can be so helpful to so many people. And I think it also helps with the believability aspect, because you're more likely to believe that a reviewer has actually read the book if they've written some words about it and they've said what they did or didn't like. Whereas sometimes you do see these, especially the 1-star and the 5-star reviews, and you can never be truly sure whether all of those reviewers or raters in this instance have actually read the book or not, especially because we do know, we've all seen it, where a book hasn't been released yet and it's got plenty of 1 or 5-star reviews. For whatever reason, people choose to do that. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the different ins and outs of reviewing and the hows and the why-fors or anything along those lines, but I would like to spend a little bit of time looking at 3 different sites that you can leave reviews on. Some of these you might be familiar with, others maybe not. And I'm going to choose these from different kind of stages of growth, if you like. So we're going to start with Goodreads, which is the kind of the granddaddy of the review sites for books, because it's been around for so long and it's basically the industry standard. Then we're going to look at Storygraph, which has come along in the last few years and has really emerged as, I think, the main challenger to Goodreads. And then I'm going to take a look at Storylace, which is a new up-and-coming review site as well. Now, 2 quick caveats before I start on that. First of all, this is not a paid or sponsored video in any sense. I've just done this on my own back. And secondly, I don't use any of these sites on mobile. I use them on my desktop, so there may be a different aesthetic and maybe some different functionality if you were to use these on mobile as well, because they do all have a mobile app available. So I'm going to start off, as I say, with Goodreads and show kind of what I'm looking at as I'm talking about it. So first of all, the things that I like about Goodreads. The main thing really is the size of it, the overall kind of user base. It is the industry standard. As I said, most people are aware of it. If they're an author, chances are they've got an author profile, or at least their books are on there. And if they're reviewers or avid readers who like to keep their finger on the pulse of new releases and what people are saying about books, those people have generally got an account here, or at least are familiar with Goodreads. So that of course is the main draw. It's the one that people use. Most books are on there, or if they're not, it doesn't take them long to get on there once they've been released or announced to be released. And because of that user base, I think it's the one that, whether you like it or not, is most helpful to the individual authors, because that's where people look. But it is also a bit of a pain because it's quite dysfunctional. I like the visual setup and the layout of it, although chances are that's because that's what I'm used to, because it's not exactly state of the art or anything along those lines. But I like that when I log in, I've got a clear view of what I'm reading over on the left here, my reading challenge for the year, how many books I've read against what I've set as my goal, an overview of my want to read list, and a view of some of my bookshelves, which is not a function that I actually use beyond the default. But in terms of being dysfunctional, it's one of those things and one of those sites that I don't need a lot from, and what I do want, it generally does that quite well. But as I say, it is quite dysfunctional as well. Being owned by Amazon, you would expect it would have at least a bit of a budget in terms of development cash, but it doesn't seem to have that, or at least do anything with it. It's barely changed in years, and there are various things that occasionally stop working. So sometimes you can literally click on a book and it will just hang and it'll break and it won't go anywhere. Or it'll go very slow but eventually get there. And the search function as well is pretty terrible, I think, especially for self-published books. As for instance, I think it does change, it does maybe learn, or maybe it's based on an algorithm as more people add it to their lists. But for instance, I searched a couple of days ago Sea of Souls by NC Scrimger. You can see it there on my want to read because I just received a copy of it and added it therefore to my want to read list. And this didn't come up in the search list, so at the top here it does now come up, so I think it has changed, as I say. But originally when I searched for this, it didn't show up even though the book was on the site, and it wasn't in this list, although the 5 titles that were in this kind of sneak peek drop down of the search results, they were only partial results as opposed to the complete result. So sometimes you do have to put in the author name as well in order to get the book to show up on this list. In terms of the books themselves, lots has been said about the inability to give 5-star ratings, or to give half-star ratings I should say. You can only rate between 1 and 5. And there's also been a lot said about being able to DNF a book. Now you can DNF a book on here, it is something that you can do. You can create a shelf for DNF, or you can do what I do, which is just to leave a review on a book without any red dates or without a star rating. But it's not a streamlined process. There's not really something in the setup that really allows you to do that without jumping through a few hoops first of all. So for instance, one of the books that I didn't finish recently was Night Angel Nemesis by Brent Weeks, and in here I have got a review where I DNF'd it, and there's no star rating, so I don't give a star rating for a book that I didn't finish, but I still leave a review to say why I didn't finish it, what did I like, what did I not like about the book, and there's no red dates on here, although it does give the date that I left the review. Overall, I think Goodreads only really survives because of its user base. It does so because it's the one that most people tend to use. As I say, it is the industry standard, going back to the days where there was very little, if any, competition. So moving on to Storygraph, and I don't actually use Storygraph. I tested it out, I didn't really like it, I didn't get on with it, and I therefore stopped using it. You can see on the right here when we log into it, it says that I'm currently reading Of War and Ruin, which is a book that I read in January of this year, so that's when I stopped using this particular site. So I've gone to one of my friends, Tufty McTavish, who I think he might be a librarian here actually, but he does use it on a daily basis because I wanted to get a bit of a, not necessarily detailed, but I wanted to get an overview from someone who does use it, because I can only really say about the things that I don't like about the site. So first of all, in terms of that, I don't really like the overall kind of layout here. I don't like the user interface, and it's one of the things that stopped me from using it. You can see the recommendations down at the bottom here, or towards the bottom of the initial view, and they're really not tailored to me. I think you can make those better, but you have to spend a lot of time kind of plugging in details and really tailoring your user profile to get this to come up. One of the things that Tufty did say is that the recommendation engine is very powerful and very good, but I suppose it's one of those things where you get more out of it as you use it more and as it learns about you. For someone who's just starting to use the site, I don't think personally the recommendations are very good, but maybe once you get using it and you start plugging in your reads as you go, maybe that will change, I don't know. One of the things that Tufty really does like about this is the stats and the tagging that you've got available. So if you go into the stats, as I say, I've not really used it for this year, so I'll take a look at last year's. This is another of the things where we kind of drift apart a little bit. I like the stats in general. I'm a stats guy, I do quite like them, but I don't like the story read stats in terms of what they give you and in what order they give them to you, and you can't change that at all. So first of all, you've got the books that you've read and the pages, and it gives you a moods kind of pie chart. That doesn't do anything for me. I'm not interested in that whatsoever, and that is actually one of the other reasons that I stopped using Storygraph. It seems to be that moods kind of drive the rating side of things a little bit, and it does ask you to categorize a book when you finish reading it. You don't have to do that, of course, and I didn't, but it's not something that does anything for me, although obviously it will for other people. You've then got the pacing, page numbering, so you've got different brackets of book size. Fiction and non-fiction, which wouldn't do anything for me because I don't read non-fiction at all. And then you've got the genres, but this is another thing that I don't like because it gives you all of the splits, so it does kind of look a little bit weird because some of these will obviously be all included in the one book. So with this graph, for instance, all of the books that I read fall into those top two categories, fantasy and science fiction. All of the other categories below there are subcategories of those. So one of the books I read was fantasy, and it was also young adult, for instance. So they're not separate. It's not the main genre of the book. It's just however many genres were included within that book. Then got the format and the different authors that you've read, the different languages, which this is where I've not tailored it. I've not read any books in Estonian or Romanian. This is just because of the Goodreads import that kind of goes a little bit squiffy at sometimes. This happened with my import Storylace as well, and it showed up some titles in different languages, and this is where I've just not gone through to find those and change them. The one graph that I do like, or the one part of it that I do like, is just this line chart there of the number of books and the pages over the course of the year, and then you got your star ratings, which for Storygraph you can do the half stars as it shows there. I've got 2.5s, 3.5s and 4.5s as well. Other things that Tufty says that he likes, which I've not really experienced, so I can't say much about them. He says the stats, tagging, reading challenges and also reading streaks are what keeps him coming back to it on a daily basis. He also says that the librarians are very responsive. They get a lot of requests and tickets, and they go through those and action them quite quickly. There's also a roadmap where you can request and vote on features, which allows you to see the kind of development of the site as well. It's very transparent in that respect. And I think that's one of the major failings of Goodreads. There is the kind of the librarian base and you can make requests, but generally when I've seen them, when I've had an idea of something, functionality that I want to see included, you can go through and you can find them, and you can generally find that someone has suggested this and it's been turned down basically as, no, we don't want to do that, or we're not able to do that, and then it's kind of left there. So it's definitely one of the downsides of Goodreads, but it looks like it's one of the upsides of Storygraph. So on to Storylace then, and this is a site that I've started using recently. I was invited to be part of the early beta kind of process in testing this out, so I am currently using it. This is up to date where Storygraph isn't. And again, starting from the login screen, it's kind of a bit limited once more. And certainly for me, because there aren't many users on here at the moment, and even fewer who are in my kind of circle who I've connected with, it does make it look just like I'm keeping tabs on my friend Chad and what he's reading. But obviously that will change in time as I add more people to my kind of circle on here. Although it's quite basic in what it shows you on this initial screen, I do like the colours. It's very different in terms of the default view with the dark layout, and then you've got some bright, vibrant colours for the different categories and titles and things along those lines. And because this is new and it'll be the first time for probably most people seeing Storylace, I will go through it in a little bit more detail than I did with Goodreads and Storygraph. So first of all, taking a look at the library, it starts off with the profile that you have, and you've got various little bits on here that are from quests, which I'll show you in a moment, but you've got the trophy cabinet, you've got an introduction to the stats, you've got titles and crystals that you can gain, wisdom crystals, for completing quests. And you've got a little bit of additional information down there as well, and then you can go into the latest updates. In the library, you've got various different sections, so I've actually slightly tailored this one. When you do an import from Goodreads, for instance, it asks you what you want your to be read list to be classed as, and I went with the suggestion of under consideration. So these are the titles that I'm going to read at some point. It's kind of my want to read list rather than my scheduled to read. And then what I do is when I put them onto my actual read list for the month, I will move that into the to be read category. You've then got a separate section for abandoned, so there is a function for you to mark a book as abandoned, and then you can treat it as usual with regards to reviews and ratings if you wish to do so. And then of course your read books list, which is in order of date read, although you can filter that and you can sort it in a different way if you prefer to. In social, as I say, there's not many users on here who I've connected with at the moment, but I like how it does give you an affinity, for instance, where you can go through and it shows you the books that you've read in common and a taste match, and gives you an affinity score for you and the other reader as well. And then on to the quests and awards. So starting off with Memory Lane, this is the yearly reading goal essentially, and it gives you your reading stats for the year. So I've read 42 so far, 35 different authors, nearly 20,000 pages. That's slightly out of date as books are updating on here as well, it should be said. And then it goes through the quests that I've completed, and then the magical moments as well. So it gives me the fastest, slowest, shortest, longest, all of those kind of things. And then a timeline of all of the reads that I've gone through this year. So one of the things that is very different before I get on to the quests is the actual book profile, the My Book it's called. So you've got the normal details of the book when you go into it, but in My Book you've got this section so you can mark it into the different categories. First of all, you've got the reading progress if you wish to use that, collections and tagging if you again wish to use it. Neither of those are things that I personally use. The read dates, of course, and the review. And one of the things that I like about the review, again, like with Storygraph, it gives you some of the categories that you can put it in with regards to the reading pace, for instance. But I like the scoring on here. There are actually no star ratings on Storylace. Instead, if you wish to, you can use an overall score. So this is out of 100. So I put across my weighted ratings into here. You do have the option to put no score, or you can put a number in there. And you can also choose to recommend, not recommend, or if you've got no opinion, you don't want to put either a yes or no against a book, you can do that as well. So I do like that. It does give a lot of additional things with regards to the actual book profile itself. And then on to the quests. So these are just something that's a little bit fun basically. So you can go through and join quests and mark them complete basically by reading books. So some of these are auto-calculated. So if it's a quest that says explore mythology, read 15 books that feature real-world myths or pantheon deities, and it will auto-calculate that. So it will have those books tagged, and as you read them, it will mark them against this quest for you. If it's self-curated, here be dragons, read 15 books that feature dragons, you can go in there and actually choose books yourself that feature dragons to complete this quest. As you complete them, they don't mean anything, as I say, it's just a bit of fun, but they do give you maybe a mask, some different titles, and some wisdom crystals for doing so. And as with anything, you can go in and just request a bit of additional information about what these mean. So as I say, I just wanted to give a basic overview, a very quick look at why I think you should rate and especially review books, because there's no requirement to do this, but it definitely helps other readers and also the book authors as well. But also I wanted to have a look at some of these review sites and especially introduce Storylace as one that I've started using, but that is quite new, so most people probably haven't heard of it. Let me know in the comments down below if you use any of these sites and what you think of it, or if you've got a different site that you use to rate and to look at reviews and so forth for books. I'll be interested to take a look at any others as well. That's everything for today. I hope you enjoyed this slightly different video. I'll see you in the next one sometime soon. Until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books, Bye for now.